Welcome to Very Rich Stories, where you will hear stories of secrets, lies, and betrayal, and many of them true. And now, she found the $250,000 ring he bought for someone else. He took his own wife to court to get the ring back that he bought for his mistress. Jacob Whitmore liked to think of himself as a man who understood risk. He understood markets. He understood leverage. He understood how to move money from one place to another so fast, so quietly, and so elegantly that by the time anyone asked questions, he had already made a profit. He understood appearances too. The Beverly Hills mansion. The luxury vehicles out front. The tailored suits. The charity dinners. The art on the walls. The perfect wife. From the outside, Jacob and Eliza Whitmore looked like one of those couples people whisper about at valet stands and hotel bars. Not because they seemed happy. Because they seemed expensive. Their life had all the visual markers of success. A long, sweeping driveway. Polished stone floors. Staff who knew when to disappear. 2 Range Rovers gleaming in the California light like they had never seen dust a day in their lives. Inside the house, everything was curated. Nothing was accidental. And Eliza fit into that world perfectly. She was immaculate without looking like she had tried. Hair always done, clothes always elegant, jewelry always restrained enough to signal real money. She had the kind of composure that made other people straighten their backs around her. She wasn't loud. She didn't have to be. For 15 years, Eliza had been Jacob's wife, hostess, social partner, and silent witness to his rise. She had given up more than most people ever knew. Early in the marriage, she had let her own ambitions bend around his. She made space for his schedule, his moods, his networking, his ego. She stood beside him through the years when the wealth was still being built and through the years when he started acting like he had built it alone. And lately, Jacob had become distant. Not in the obvious way. Not in the sloppy way. Jacob was too polished for that. He wasn't coming home smelling like perfume or making ridiculous excuses. No, Jacob had grown cold in a way that rich, self-important men often do. He had become efficient with her. Measured. Detached. He answered questions with half answers. He took more business trips. He kept his phone face down. He smiled without warmth. He spoke to Eliza as though she had become another fixture in the house he already owned. And somewhere in the middle of all that emotional frost, there was another woman. Her name was Roxy. Now, Roxy was not the kind of woman people easily forget. She was 26, glamorous, curvy, disciplined, and far more dangerous than she first appeared. Men looked at her and saw what they wanted to see. They saw a knockout. They saw a fantasy. They saw youth, beauty, softness, and hunger. What they usually missed was that Roxy was smart. Very smart. By day, Roxy was a medical doctor. She had credentials, training, discipline, and enough intelligence to understand people at their weakest and vainest. By night, though, she liked a different kind of power. She liked high-end clubs, velvet booths, low lights, expensive bottle service, and the particular electricity of being the woman every rich man in the room noticed first. That was where Jacob met her. Not in a hospital. Not at a conference. Not through respectable society. In a high-end gentleman's club where discretion was part of the decor. Roxy wasn't on a stage when he saw her. She was in VIP, dressed like temptation with a medical degree, sitting back and letting men compete to be interesting. She had mastered that look some women learn early and perfect with time, amused, slightly bored, entirely in control. Jacob approached her because powerful men always think they are the exception. And Roxy let him approach because she already knew exactly what kind of man he was. The affair began the way these things often do among wealthy people who believe they are too sophisticated to be common. It began in private cars, private lounges, private elevators, and private lies. Jacob told himself Roxy understood him. That she was alive in a way Eliza wasn't. That Eliza had become too predictable, too polished, too familiar. The truth was simpler. Roxy made him feel chosen. She made him feel virile. She made him feel like the richer he got, the more entitled he was to upgrade every part of his life, including the woman beside him. So he spent private jets, luxury hotels, designer shopping, little transfers here, larger transfers there, rent, tuition debt, gifts, procedures, vacations, jewelry, cash, more cash. He spent with the relaxed confidence of a man who had never been meaningfully told no. And because men like Jacob always assume they are the smartest person in the room, he was certain he could hide it. What he didn't know was that Roxy wasn't only seeing him. Not in the pure, romantic sense he liked to imagine. Roxy liked luxury, but more than that, she liked leverage. She knew how to let a rich man feel generous while quietly treating his generosity like one revenue stream among several. She let men believe they were rescuing her, elevating her, transforming her, when in truth she was already fully capable of orchestrating her own ascent. Jacob was not the architect of Roxy's lifestyle. He was merely one of its sponsors. And yet, despite all that, Jacob convinced himself this was love. So one day, he went to a private jeweler and bought a ring. Not just any ring. A monstrous diamond engagement ring priced at $250,000. He had it appraised for even more. Insured for even more than that. He wanted it documented, protected, and positioned as an asset. That should have told him something. Men in love do not usually think like actuaries. But Jacob was not really buying romance. He was buying a symbol of possession, a jewel large enough to announce that he had chosen a younger woman and intended to make the whole world watch. He even had the nerve to attach a sentimental note. To my darling Roxy. Forever yours. And then, because he was not ready to explain a $250,000 purchase to his wife, he hid the ring box in a drawer in his study inside the mansion he still shared with Eliza. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was assuming Eliza would never open the wrong drawer. On a quiet afternoon, Eliza went into Jacob's richly appointed study looking for an envelope. The room was exactly what you would expect from a man like Jacob. Heavy desk, dark wood, leather chair, shelves lined with expensive books he had probably never read, sculptures chosen to imply taste, lamps chosen to imply seriousness. Eliza opened one drawer. Not there. Opened another. And found the velvet box. You know how sometimes your body understands something before your mind lets you? That was the moment for Eliza. The smallness of the box. The absurd richness of the velvet. The silence in the room. The knowledge arriving all at once and refusing to wait politely. She opened it. The ring flashed in the light like an insult. It was enormous. Cold. Perfect. More extravagant than any ring Jacob had ever given her. For a split second she just stared, as if her eyes were trying to reject the information. Then she saw the note. To my darling Roxy. Forever yours. And just like that, the last layer of protection around her marriage burned away. Now, some women would have screamed. Some would have smashed the box. Some would have called a friend. Some would have hired a locksmith, a divorce lawyer, and a moving company before sundown. Eliza did something much quieter. She closed the box, picked up her keys, and left. She drove to the beach. It was dusk, the sort of California evening that can make even devastation look cinematic. The tide was washing in. The sky was mauve and gold. The air felt charged, like the world was holding its breath. Eliza got out of the car alone. At least, she thought she was alone. What she didn't know was that Jacob, coming home earlier than expected and sensing something was off, had noticed just enough to grow suspicious. Perhaps it was the drawer left slightly ajar. Perhaps it was the absence of the box. Perhaps it was intuition sharpened by guilt. Whatever it was, Jacob followed her. Not close enough to be seen. Just close enough to witness disaster from a distance. At the shoreline, Eliza opened the box one more time. That ring represented everything unbearable in one glittering object. The lies. The humiliation. The wasted years. The casual cruelty of a man who had used her loyalty as a cushion while planning to replace her. She drew back her arm. She meant to throw it into the ocean. But heartbreak does strange things to the body. It shakes the hands, shortens the breath, makes the simplest motions uncertain. The ring slipped. Not out into the waves. Down. Into the wet sand at her feet. The tide rolled in. The sand shifted. The ring disappeared. And Eliza, in the failing light, thought she had thrown it away. She closed the empty box, turned, and walked back to her car, believing the sea had swallowed Jacob's future whole. From his hidden vantage point, Jacob saw enough to know she had gone to the beach with the ring and left without it. When Eliza drove off, he rushed down toward the shore and searched frantically. He looked for a glint in the surf, a box in the sand, any sign of the ring. He found nothing. That was when the story split in two. Eliza believed the ring was in the ocean. Jacob believed Eliza had destroyed it or hidden it. And the truth was simpler than either of them knew. The ring was lying there in the sand, flat, half-covered, already becoming one more expensive thing the earth had no use for. That night, Eliza confronted Jacob. She did not ease into it. She did not ask questions whose answers she already knew. She put the empty ring box down between them and let the silence accuse him first. Jacob looked at it, looked at her, and did not even bother pretending. That was perhaps the cruelest thing about him. When finally cornered, he chose arrogance over remorse. He told her he was in love with Roxy. He told her their marriage had been dead for years. He told her she had become emotionally unavailable, as though infidelity was some natural response to a woman growing tired of being treated like expensive wallpaper. He said Roxy made him feel alive. And with that, 15 years of marriage were reduced to one man's midlife vanity project. Within days, Jacob moved out. Within a week, Eliza was served. He was suing her for the ring. He claimed she had unlawfully destroyed personal property worth $250,000. He demanded repayment. He framed himself not as a cheating husband, but as the injured owner of a lost asset. The story hit the gossip blogs first, then local media, then bigger outlets. Millionaire husband sues wife over ring meant for mistress. People could not get enough of it. Some thought Eliza had every right to throw the ring away. Others said property was property. But almost everyone agreed on one thing: Jacob Whitmore had managed to make himself look ridiculous. Still, Jacob wasn't relying on public opinion. He had done his homework. He had the receipt. He had the box. He had arranged to have Eliza's fingerprints on that box documented. He had an insurance policy ready. In fact, he had already tried to position himself to file an insurance claim, spinning a version of events that suggested the ring had been stolen or wrongfully disposed of. But Jacob had underestimated Eliza in the one way men like him so often do. He had mistaken stillness for weakness. Eliza hired an excellent attorney. Not loud. Not theatrical. The kind of lawyer who smiled less the more dangerous the conversation became. And her lawyer immediately hired a forensic accountant. That decision changed everything. Because once the accountant started tracing Jacob's spending, the ring began to look like the smallest problem in the room. Subscribe and tune in for part 2 on this channel, Very Rich Stories.